United States, the Biden administration is deeply, deeply involved in genocide. And you're not seeing it covered. All that was talked about today on the Sunday shows was the Trump conviction. So Gaza is kind of off the radar, which is, I guess, good for the Biden administration. And, Trump is not really on message either. But we haven't been able to cover it yet. Horrific massacre took place in Rafah, among many horrific massacres. And I mean, just in the last 36 hours, Israel has killed over 100 people across the Gaza Strip. The brutality is particularly pronounced in the north around Jabalia, but also in Rafah. We saw about, 5 days ago, the tents massacre. This was sort of undeniable that Israel carried out this massacre, bombing an area in the Al-Mawasi refugee camp west of Rafah, where people were told to go as a safe zone. And then they were just indiscriminately bombed in a targeted fashion. Their tents caught on fire. People were burned alive. A child was beheaded. And you can, there's video where you can see that. We're not going to show the video. For some reason, Biden hasn't seen that video, but he saw a video of non-existent beheaded babies on October 7th. The State Department won't admit that any babies have been beheaded by Israel when it's all on camera. And another thing that they won't acknowledge is that the munitions that were used were supplied. These baby buster bombs were supplied by the Blinken State Department through a license for GBU-38 small diameter bombs, thousands of which have been shipped to Israel since 2001. This is CNN of all places. U.S.-made munitions used in deadly strike on Rafah tent camp, CNN analysis shows. And the analysis just picks up on open sources, which is, photographs taken and video taken by local Palestinians and Palestinian journalists after the tent massacre, showing the shells of the bombs. I can tell you, having been present in Rafah after the Black Friday massacre on August 1st, 2014, I walked through Rafah and found U.S.-made munitions that literally said "Made in the USA" everywhere. But those were 500-pound bombs. These are smaller 250-pound bombs. And Tony Blinken was asked about these bombs, was asked about whether there was a U.S. role at all in this attack. And here's his response.
Very clear with Israel on the imperative in this instance, as in other instances, to immediately investigate and determine exactly what happened and why it happened. And if accountability is necessary, to make sure that there is accountability. I can't tell you as we meet here this evening what weapons were used or how they were used. All of that needs to be the product of a deliberate but also fast investigation, and we'll await the results. Been very clear with Israel on the imperative.
So, let Israel investigate itself, and we don't know what happened there when it's pretty well documented.
On top of how ridiculous it is to let Israel investigate itself, you have the fact that what Israel's putting out outright disinformation, staged audio of what it claims are intercepted conversations of people inside Gaza, where basically they happen to admit to everything Israeli talking points, Israeli propaganda claims. So Israel put out this tape that they said was of two people in Gaza. They've done this before too, after the bombing of the Al-Adi hospital months ago. And on the call, these two people say, yes, the Israelis launched a very precision strike, left a very small crater. And what happened was it hit our weapons. So it hit Hamas bombs. And also we had money laying around. There was Hamas money laying around. They threw that in for fun. Why not? And it's such an obvious scam, a fabrication, basically scripted content. That's what Israel's putting out. So that's the government that Blinken says we have to rely on to investigate itself. Not only a government that will investigate itself and clear itself, but that is literally putting out stage propaganda to whitewash its own crimes. And Blinken wants to take that seriously and wants to pretend as if he doesn't know that U.S. munitions were used in that, when even CNN had to acknowledge that they were.
In December, was it December or November? Israel dropped a 2,000-pound bomb on the Maghazi refugee camp, killing over 80 civilians. There was no military target there at all. And when it was established weeks later that there was no military target at all, Israel declared, after stating that they had eliminated a top Hamas figure, they claimed that they had committed some terrible mistake. And the same thing happened after the Flower massacre in the north, when people were gunned down with tank fire, waiting for aid in northern Gaza, where aid was being blocked. They claimed that it was their fault and they were shot by Hamas police before Israel admitted it, then said it was a mistake, or they lied about it. They lied about the Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital massacre, blamed Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket misfire. And now they lied again. They first said that they had eliminated a top Hamas operative. It's like a playbook. Then they said that it was a terrible mistake when it was clear that there was no military target there. And they were just massacring civilians the same way they massacred World Central Kitchen workers. And I think there was some deception that was deployed there as well. That they had armed men. Israel claimed that armed men had entered the World Central Kitchen convoy from a warehouse, and they targeted them on that basis. In reality, a settler, a religious nationalist fanatic settler, pushed the button, authorized the strike on the World Central Kitchen workers. And we can just assume the same. We can assume that this Rafah massacre took place because Israel wanted to clear Rafah of refugees so it could deepen its invasion of the city, because the invasion's ongoing. There are tanks in the center of Rafah, and the Biden administration said, well, we agreed that Israel could have this limited invasion because so many refugees in Rafah have fled north. And so we think that the civilian casualty toll will be lower. And now Israel's in the center. It was obvious to me that this was a message to refugees. It was deliberate, and they beheaded children on purpose, along with burning people alive with a U.S. supplied weapon. And just one more point, since I'm kind of going off here. Remember, this was a so-called small diameter bomb, GBU 68, not like a 38, not like a GBU 82, which are the 2,000-pound bombs the U.S. has supplied, the baby buster bombs. This was propaganda deployed by the Biden administration in early December. U.S. officials outlined steps to Israel to reduce civilian casualties. We're only going to kill less babies now. The measures include using smaller bombs against Hamas, U.S. officials said. Smaller bombs. Well, here's the smaller bombs. They caused one of the most notorious massacres possible, and you advised them to do it. That was your solution. Instead of, I don't know, not sending the bombs, you could have just stopped sending the bombs and then had a ceasefire. The hostages would be freed. Tens of thousands of people would still be alive, but this isn't an administration that will actually act in the interest of human life. Just look at what they're doing to extend the Ukraine proxy war.
Yeah. So like this is the tangible result of Biden's so-called pause of that U.S. shipment that included 2,000-pound bombs. You send over these bombs, these so-called smaller bombs, that still massacre people. So tangibly, zero difference whatsoever. And ultimately, that pause was also meaningless because Israel already had all the weapons it needed to attack Rafah anyway, as we just saw with this massacre. But yet, they still won't say that the red line has been crossed. Even though Jake Sullivan said that the metric, he said there's no mathematical formula, but what we'll look to see when it comes to judging Israel's conduct in Rafah is if there's death and destruction. Well, Israel's been causing nothing but death and destruction. But of course, nothing has changed because Biden's red line doesn't exist. It was just another scam.
He doesn't have a red line. He hasn't had a red line. He has a bottom line. The bottom line is getting money from donors like Haim Saban. pro-Israel donors that comprise at least a plurality of donors to the Biden campaign and the Biden Victory Fund.